Hi, today I want to give you some key reminders about Project 1, the research guide, and talk to you about how you're going to think about one of the readings for this week and doing peer response in preparation for revising your drafts and submitting a final project. So I'm going to walk you through a few of those things today. So I'll start by giving you some reminders about what you're trying to accomplish in doing the personal research guide. First of all, this research guide is primarily a place for you to compile the information that you are gathering about the discourse community that you're researching this semester. So in blog 1, you started by exploring what you already know. So you've got a bunch of prior knowledge out on the table, things that you could already answer about these questions. And for some of you, that might have been a lot, and for others of you, that might have been just a little bit of information because maybe you're still on the fringes of joining this discourse community. So here in Project 1 is our chance to get to learn more, and you're going to do that through using primary and secondary research methods. So in terms of secondary research methods, we're talking about looking at article databases, doing online searches, and trying to find out information that way, looking at pamphlets, books, journals, any of those kinds of things that might help you discover more about the community you're studying. But of great importance to this project is the primary research that you conduct, and that is your interview of a professional or academic in the field. They are going to give you real insider information about a lot of the stuff that you're looking for. And talking to a Wayne State librarian might be a nice complement to that. But this is a place for you to find out, to go beyond the basics and to ask questions that you can't find out on your own by doing an internet search. So in those interviews would be a great place. Like, let's say someone tells you, well, we conduct studies in our field, and those are published in a journal. That would be a great place to ask a question like, when you're writing up a study, how do you go about doing that? What are some important parts of the process for you? So use that interview to get beyond the basic information. I've also uploaded several examples in the Project 1 Research Guide folder for you to look at, and these are student samples from a previous semester. These would be great for you to look at, not just to see what kinds of things the students are writing about, but also to pay attention to how they have organized their projects. When you look at these 3 projects, you'll see some similarities in terms of the overall topic, of course, because they're writing about these same discourse community features that you'll be writing about just as they apply to the field that they're looking at. And then components of overall structure will be the same because of the content that they're looking at, but they all look a little bit different. So you see in here bullet points, headings. In this example, you will see an abstract, which is a feature of APA format, which would be appropriate for someone who's studying social work, and then a lot of paragraphing. In this example, you see a mix of short paragraphs and numbers and bullet points. And so I want you to think about how best to organize the information in your research guide so that it's accessible to your readers, and also, importantly, so that it's accessible to you, so that you can use the guide as a place to store the information that you're gathering throughout this semester. You might also have questions about how to know whether you're doing the job that you want to do in this project. And so I've given you in the rubric, in the project description, in the syllabus, a checklist and some guidelines for all of the things that you need to be including. And if you include the content and you've thought about organization and you've done some careful writing, you're doing an acceptable job on the paper. And that might be the goal that many of you have is I want to learn what I'm supposed to learn and complete the project. But some of you might be interested in knowing, what can I do to make sure that I'm doing an excellent job, that I'm going a little bit above and beyond in this project. And so here I'm outlining some things that you probably should pay attention to as you revise. So in terms of genre and organization, any project should have ideas presented in a logical order, and any paragraphs or sections should be focused on main ideas, not just a bunch of scattered thoughts put together. More excellent projects will have very purposeful headings, and this is especially important in this project. They will show consideration of how readers will use the text as a guide. So think about the genre of the guide, like a travel guide, a guide for a computer game, a guide for cooking, like a recipe. How is that structured? Think about how those guides for different purposes are organized, and how will you best organize the text in your research guide to help someone else understand these key features and for you to look back and find the information that you need. In terms of content, any project that you are completing for Project 1, any of your texts should identify the key aspects of the discourse community according to Swale's concepts. That identification is a key part of this. More excellent papers will use the theoretical terms appropriately in discussing and analyzing these aspects of the discourse community. So not just saying, here's what this thing is, but here is something important about it that I learned from doing my research. In terms of professionalism, one of the things that you're starting to work on in this project is using the citation format that is used by that discourse community, whether that's APA, MLA, or another kind of citation format. So you'll want to investigate that. And more excellent papers will do a very good job of using that citation format. So the previous slide was a lot of higher order thinking, and here we're thinking about just the polish of the text that you are contributing. So same thing, I expect any of your papers to have been edited, not to have distracting errors, so that you're showing your ethos as a writer, but a more excellent paper will have that writing without error and with higher stylistic impact in terms of sentences. So those are some things to think about when you are checking your draft in the coming weeks to see, am I getting the job done? And if I want to move above and beyond acceptable into excellent territory, what are some things that I should be thinking about? One of your readings for this week is Elizabeth Wardle's Identity, Authority, and Learning to Write in New Workplaces. And we're going to be talking just briefly about it this week and then returning to it in the next couple of weeks as we get into looking more at academic articles to understand how that genre is structured in different disciplines. But one of the major points that she makes as she's introducing the topic is saying that, this is a quote from page 525, achieving enculturation in workplace communities requires neophytes to engage in new practices, including new written practices. Exploring those written practices is one of those things that we're going to be doing throughout our course. But I want to point you to right now a couple of the other things that Wardle writes about that might be helpful to you as you think about drafting and revising Project 1. In her article, Wardle talks about terms like activity systems, communities of practice, and discourses as she presents the literature that informs the study that she does of Allen. And these terms differ slightly from discourse communities. If we were going to map out what all these terms mean, and we may do that in the future, we would see that they have some shared components, but some slightly different nuances to them as well. So one question to think about as you draft Project 1 is whether any of these terms, as Wardle uses them, help add to your understanding of what you're investigating in the discourse community you're researching. Are any of these terms useful for adding into your discussion and analysis of what you're discovering? So that is one possibility for you to think about. A second thing to pay attention to is as you learn about the mechanisms of intercommunication, and that's one of Swale's terms, that you discover about the discourse community, pay attention to what you can discover about how these things are used. So not just what the mechanisms of communication are, but how people in the community use them and expect those genres to be used. Wardle gives the example of how Alan used the listservs to communicate with members of the faculty and graduate students, but he didn't use them the way that they expected them to be used. And generally, he didn't use email the way that they expected him to use it. So as you're thinking about that example and think about the reminder I gave you earlier, to ask questions in your interviews that get not just at what these components of the discourse community are, but how members are engaging with them. Finally, in looking at Wardle's text, you are looking at one of the major genres that we use in writing studies to communicate and share knowledge. You start to see maybe some of the features of an academic article and looking at the format of that. And we're going to really get into the genre of the academic article in the next few weeks. But as you come across genres in your field of study in this initial exploration, what do you begin to notice about how knowledge is communicated in that field? What are the expectations and conventions that are beginning to stand out to you? If you see some of those things as you're researching and writing on Project 1, those might be things that inform the content that you develop in Project 1 or shape some of the research questions that you have that you include at the end of the project. In the Week 2 folder, you see that one of your tasks for the week is to upload a draft of Project 1 to your assigned group and follow the peer response directions to upload feedback for your group members by Sunday. So you upload by Friday, give feedback by Sunday night. To do that, you're going to click on this link in the Week 2 folder, Project 1 Peer Response. And eventually all of you will see your names in a thread here. I've only just started making these threads while I am shooting the video. But you'll see your first name and last initial, and you can click on your thread, and you'll see directions for how to proceed there. So how to upload your paper as a reply, and then what you should do to comment on your peers' papers. So if I want to reply here, if I'm one of the members of the group, I can upload my project as an attachment, browsing my computer and hitting submit. And then when I am a reader, I can also reply to these threads using these guidelines. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, and I can help you work through this first process of peer response. We'll adapt it as necessary in the future, but generally we'll follow the same kind of process. The last thing I want to remind you about is that on the calendar this week during my office hours, I have marked from 11 to 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday a group conference for our class that will take place in the lounge on the 10th floor of the Maccabees building. And this is an opportunity for a number of you to come and talk with me at the same time and hear about your projects and just ask some questions and get a little bit of feedback. So if you'd like to participate in that, bring your materials with you, bring a laptop, we'll get together for half an hour and chat about how to be working through Project 1. So I hope a few of you can make it. If you can make it, send me an email to let me know that you'll be there. I hope you have a good week. Let me know if you have any questions.